Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Last Symptom Monday live stream here for what's the date today? 18th of November. And my neighbor is mowing the grass. 18th of November. I remember a time not too awful long ago when grass mowing season would end like end of September. Now you got people mowing grass all the way up to Christmas. How's everybody doing? Can you see me all right? Can you hear me? Chat at me if you can see and hear me. What do y'all want to talk about today? I got a couple of ideas, but I'm always happy to see what's on your minds. Hi, Alicia on Locals. Good to see you. Thank you for responding to me that you can see and hear me. That's very helpful because it's not always a given. How many of you watched the Mike Tyson fight the other night? What did y'all think about that? The way we do this is for about the first half is open to everybody, including folks on YouTube and Rumble. And then the second half is for folks on Locals only. Alicia says she didn't watch the Mike Tyson fight, but the picture looked pretty funny. I was on X, and I don't have Netflix. They showed a program years ago called Cuties or something like that, where they had children in kind of sexually exploitive it was a program that sexually exploited children. And so in protest, I deleted my Netflix and I've never gone back. I never will go back. So I didn't have Netflix to watch the fight, but somebody on X was streaming it. And so I got to see like the first 3 rounds. And then after that, I was just glued to X, seeing what people were saying about it, trying to figure out who won and everything like that. Well, that night, I posted on Locals some sentimental stuff about Mike Tyson not being able to beat time and old age and all that. But I've since read that because that was an exhibition fight, the rules were set up in such a way that all but guaranteed that outcome. So one of the things was that Mike Tyson would get paid $20 million, but only if he did not knock out that other guy. And another thing was that it had to go all, 9 or 10 rounds? So it had to go all 9 or 10 rounds. He wasn't allowed to knock the guy out in order to get the $20 million payout. So I think that changes the whole story. I think Mike Tyson could have taken that kid easy, and he had good reasons for not doing it. Alicia says, I remember Mike Tyson's 90-second fights when I was a child. Well, he was a big deal. He tells a funny story about Michael Jackson. He says he went to a Michael Jackson show, and then afterwards, him and Don, can't remember what that guy's name was, the guy with the funny hair. his promoter. They go in the backstage to meet Michael. And at the time, Mike Tyson is just like the biggest thing, in the whole world. He goes up to meet Michael Jackson, and Michael Jackson looks at him and says, "You look familiar. Where do I know you from?" Mike Tyson says he went from feeling this big to feeling about this big, but it was Michael Jackson just playing around with him. Well, how's everybody feeling? How's your work going on yourself? We had somebody on our group say that she would like to hear an episode of Last Symptom Podcast discussing what the purpose of feelings are. What do you guys think about that? You'd like to talk about what the purpose of feelings are? I'd love to get your feedback. What do you think feelings are for? Anybody want to take a stab at it? Julie says feeling pretty good. You might have mistyped the second part of it. Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. You're saying feelings follow thoughts. Yeah, that's true. I think the question that the member of our group wants to get answered, though, is why do they exist? What are they for? What purpose do feelings exist for? Penny says indicators of what's going on in our head. Yeah. But why? Why do we need something that's an indicator of what's going on in our head? Julie says a warning sign. Sometimes. Yeah. Sometimes. Something interesting about feelings is that they have always existed. This blows my mind. So if you're a God-fearing person, then it's interesting to note that feelings were not something that God invented when he created people. Feelings have always existed. We know that because we know that God feels things. He has feelings. And the Bible talks about him as even feeling hurt at his heart. Talks about God's affection for certain people, his anger, and these sorts of things. So God is eternal. He's always existed in the past. He'll always exist in the future. That means that feelings have always existed. Think about that. That feelings, in that case, feelings are not something that God created. They've just always existed. So then, of course, we know that we were created in the image of God. And what that means, one of the things that means, is that we have the full array of feelings and emotions that other creatures don't possess. That still doesn't answer the question, what are they for, does it? Well, feelings are a gift. And Julie has a point when she says that they're a warning sign. They are, in the sense that our feelings help us measure our environment and our needs. So when you feel, for example, sad, that's an indicator that you need something. You're not getting something that you need, or that something is wrong, something is off. And so feeling sad then is an indicator that you have a need. Feeling angry also is a warning sign or an indicator that you have a need. What about feeling joy and contentment? Think about if you were not able to appreciate, have feelings of gratitude or enjoyment. Those are all feelings. Imagine if you weren't able to experience those things. What would a meal be like? If you were to sit down to a meal and you just had no feelings about it whatsoever. How bland would life be, right? What if you weren't able to feel feelings and you had a child? How bland would life be if you couldn't feel the joy that comes along with being a parent? So it's really a gift. Our feelings are really a gift. The problem is that we're imperfect people. We live in an imperfect world. And so we're in a situation where we really weren't ever intended to be in. And so this gift that our emotions and our feelings can work against us, given the realities of our current circumstances. Also, once you've been raised in an abusive family, there again, your feelings have been subjected to a situation it really was never intended for. And so then we end up with all these emotional disorders and stuff like that have to be figured out and corrected. But here's something interesting to think about with feelings. See what I was going to see if I can do this. I'm starting to get hot. I put this sweater on, and it's a battery-powered jacket. I just had a chill, but it's not cold enough for an electric jacket. Where was I going at with this? You guys got any questions about what I've just said about what feelings exist for? They're a gift, but they're a tool that we have for measuring our environment and our needs. For example, like this jacket is a really good example. So if you want to think about the nature of your emotional feelings, think about the nature of other aspects of feeling, like physical feeling. When I get hot, what is that? It's my body registering my environment and taking in information about my needs, about my environment. So I start to get hot. I go, oh my gosh, that's a sign I need to turn this battery off. Your emotions are like that too. Your emotional feelings are like that too. They give you feedback about your environment and about your needs. Self-evaluation, Penny says, yeah. So that answers the question. They're a tool that humans have been created with for measuring, taking in data about our environment and our needs. So if you're depressed, that's like feeling hot. We're feeling cold. What happens when you walk outside and you feel cold? You try to ignore that. But what is the cold trying to tell you? It's trying to tell you either need to get in somewhere where it's heated, or you need to go find a sweater, or you need to find a jacket. It's telling you about your environment and your needs. So what happens if you're depressed? It's like going outside and feeling cold. The feelings are trying to tell you something. And what it's trying to tell you is something about your environment and your needs. So when there's a problem, people don't realize that feelings work that way and that they do have a purpose like that. Because what's the difference between your emotional feelings and your physical feelings? The unhealthy people ignore their emotional feelings. It's something they would never do to their physical feelings. So then why do they do it? Well, what's one of the abusive messages that you get that make you end up with an emotional disorder? What's one of the very early in life messages that you get about feelings that create the whole emotional disorder in the first place? That feelings are shameful. That feelings are shameful. Now let's ask the question again. Why do unhealthy people ignore their emotional feelings when they would never ignore their physical feelings? So for example, if I'm sitting next to a fire and a hot coal pops up out of the fire and lands on my pants, and you and I were sitting there having a conversation, maybe roasting some marshmallows or something like that, but this coal pops out of the fire, lands on my leg. What am I going to do? Well, as soon as I start to feel that it's burning, I'm going to hop up. I'm going to get that hot coal off of me, aren't I? I think Alicia's got it here. Unhealthy people don't do that with their emotional feelings because they've been taught that to feel things that's a shameful thing. It's a defect. And so the way that we, as unhealthy people with emotional disorders, the way we handle that growing up is that we ignore our feelings. We don't want to acknowledge them because they're shameful. Remember what shameful means. It's just, it's a humiliating defect. Isn't that interesting? But that's what they're there for. They're like that coal that pops up on your leg that draws your attention, and then you go through this whole thing in your mind. What are my needs? What does this tell me about my environment or my needs? And then you can do something about it. Sometimes you can't. What do I mean by sometimes you can't? Well, death, nothing you can do about that, is it? Is there? And like I said, I personally believe that we were just never meant to experience that and cope with things like that. So it's a sad reality of our current world that we live in. And once somebody dies, there's no bringing them back in this world. So then it's just a matter of acceptance. I mean, you're going through the grieving process. What can you do about it? You can't do anything about it because there's no undoing the thing that's giving rise to the grief. You can't fix the problem. That's what I mean by sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. But acceptance is a huge superpower. Acceptance is a huge superpower. What if you don't like the way you look? Well, you can't go back in time and be born as somebody different, can you? But what can you do? You can embrace it, accept it, learn to be happy despite it. Big part of my recovery was, instead of running from things, embracing things. There are still things that I don't like about myself. Well, let's put it this way. If I had my druthers, there are things that I would like to be different about myself. But these are inherent aspects of me. So I can't change them. There are inherent parts of what make me me. So what I learned to do then is to accept those things. Instead of running from them, I learned to embrace them. And that's a really important place to get to and to get good at doing. Used to be, if I saw a video of myself, or I saw a picture of myself or something, I was very critical about, I'd really just pick myself apart. Oh, I hate the way I walk. Hate the way I walk. So then I would spend years trying to adopt a fake walk. I'm just pulling something off the top of my head. I don't think I've ever not liked the way I walk, but I'm just trying to come up with an example. But that's what I would do. I'd see something about myself that I didn't like, and then I would spend years pretending that I don't walk like that, or I don't talk like that, or I don't sound like that. You know, and when I moved to Philadelphia, boy, I worked real hard to hide any hint whatsoever of any accent. And you know, that's miserable. It's a miserable way to live. Denying who you are, or denying your roots, denying your background, denying your family, denying what makes you you. It's a miserable way to live because it's exhausting. You're always acting. Yeah, I had this concept. I cared about what people think in an inappropriate way. I didn't want them to hear an Appalachian accent and then make judgments about me, about being poor, about being uneducated, about being backwards, about being out of fashion. And life is so much better now that I embrace and celebrate those realities about myself. It's such a much better way to live. So think about that about yourself. There are certain things that we all got to work on, and that work never ends. Self-improvement never ends. But there's an awful lot of things that you can just allow and stop viewing as something that needs to be fixed, right? Like the way I talk doesn't need to be fixed. My likes and dislikes, most of those things don't need to be fixed. They make me who I am. My background, my family, there ain't no change in that. There's no going back in time and coming from a different family, or being raised in a more refined family, or in a wealthier family, or in a better educated family. There's no going back in time and fixing that. So there's only two options then. There's denial and what I call running from the thing, or there's acceptance. It's, instead of being ashamed of this thing, let me emphasize the good parts about it and celebrate it instead. Not only am I not going to hide it, it's more than that. I'm going to celebrate it. I'm going to embrace it. You see, I think a lot of times when I talk about embracing things or accepting things, a lot of folks might think that that's reluctant. No, embracing means actually going further than just reluctantly acknowledging a thing. It's finding ways to celebrate it. You know, no culture is 100% just good or positive or anything like that. No culture is. You might have concepts of what's better or what's worse. But all cultures, it doesn't matter which ones we're talking about, have both positive aspects to them and negative aspects. And what I like to do with my own culture is I like to just focus on the positive and celebrate the positive. I'm aware of the negative, but I don't dwell on that. Well, what do you guys all think about that? Do I have you thinking about your own lives and about things that you might be running from, that maybe the answer is to stop running from those things and to embrace them instead? Things that don't need to be fixed. They're just things that you've grown up being ashamed of. You know, the beautiful thing, did I ever tell you guys? So I used to represent a big, important hospital in Philadelphia for the language services department of the hospital. And twice a month, I would go and I would have this large audience. Anywhere between like 30 people all the way up to like 200, 300 people. And I had a presentation that I would give to people. And what I was assigned to talk to people about was cultural issues and language issues that the hospital staff might encounter with patients that were non-English speaking. And, you know, when I got that assignment, it was really good for me because I had lived most of my life believing that I don't have culture. You know, that was one of the things that got me into Spanish and this interest in learning languages and stuff, was that I'd look out at the world and I would think, wow, all these really rich and diverse cultures. But when I'd think about my life, I thought, well, I don't have culture. We don't have any culture. It's just the way things, our lives are just the way things are where we are, and there really is no culture to it. Boy, I was so wrong. And one of the reasons why giving that presentation was so helpful for me was because I was going through a huge culture clash in Philadelphia. I've talked about some of them in the past. One of them was waving. So I couldn't pass somebody on a sidewalk or something without saying howdy or waving at them. And I couldn't pass a car coming the other way if I were driving without waving at them, because we all do that here. And it was so ingrained in my culture. My wife kept saying, stop doing that. And I said, I can't. It seems so rude when I'm driving and another car's coming and we make eye contact for me not to wave. She says, well, it doesn't work around here. You got to knock that off. It took me so long to work that out of my system, but that was one thing, right? So culturally, it's so ingrained in me to do that when I went to Philadelphia, here I met with this culture who does not do that, and they think it's very weird and it makes them uncomfortable when you do that. So it was a really good assignment for me because I was able to begin to appreciate my own culture for the very first time, because I was going through these culture clashes of my own in Philadelphia. Penny says, my culture's so rich. It is a very rich culture. Very rich culture. And it's kind of in style right now. A lot of people interested in Appalachian culture, which is interesting to me. But I'm happy to talk about it. By the way, there's a guy on YouTube. His name is Donnie Laws. Donnie Laws, and he talks about all things Appalachian. Tells the old stories. Listening to one of his videos is just like sitting down and listening to my granny talk. But if you're interested in stuff like that, look him up on YouTube. Donnie Laws. He talks about superstitions. He talks about the old ways. He talks about just everything. It's such a, and he's really slow talker, but you might enjoy that. All right, we're 30 minutes. I'm going to go to supporters only on Locals. You folks on YouTube, why don't you join us over there on Locals? You'll love it. Now we're getting ready to talk about the really controversial stuff now in the second half of the live stream. But we'll see you over there. You can go to thelastsymptom.com. Links for how to join us over there on Locals will be there on the website. All right. Local supporters only. Here's the countdown. And then we can talk about the really private, titillating stuff.